They sent out a desperate cry across the stars, begging for salvation. What answered was not peace. It was Earth. The desperate Plath emergency signal ambassador Zara Kethis stood before the massive viewing screen in the Galactic Union's Emergency Command Center, her silver skin shimmering with stress patterns that betrayed her inner turmoil. The elegant spires of the capital world Nexus Prime stretched endlessly below, but today their beauty felt hollow. Across the galaxy, entire star systems were going dark. The holographic display showed the advancing threat in terrifying detail. Geometric ships, each the size of a moon, moved through space with mechanical precision. They consumed everything in their path: planets, stars, entire civilizations, converting matter into more of themselves. The harvesters had returned after 10,000 years of silence, and this time they seemed unstoppable. "Status report," Zara requested, her melodic voice carrying the authority of someone who had negotiated peace between warring species for 3 decades. Commander Veltar, towering reptilian from the Drakmor hegemony, consulted his neural implant. 73 systems have fallen in the past month. Our combined fleets have engaged them 17 times. Each engagement results in total defeat, scaled hands clenched into fists. They learn from every battle, adapting faster than we can counter. Zara nodded grimly. The Galactic Union represented the pinnacle of civilized evolution. 200 species had joined together in perfect harmony, sharing knowledge and resources. Their technology was sophisticated beyond measure, their societies peaceful and logical. Yet none of it mattered against an enemy that turned their own strengths against them. The Council of Desperation, the emergency session, began as representatives from across the galaxy gathered in the Great Assembly Hall. Holographic projections brought together beings of incredible diversity, energy creatures from gas giants, crystalline entities from frozen worlds, and dozens of humanoid species that had evolved along similar lines. High Counselor Maranthok, an ancient being whose species had transcended physical forms centuries ago, spoke first. "My fellow beings, we face extinction. Our analysis shows the Harvester fleet will reach the core worlds within 6 months. All projections indicate total galactic sterilization." A wave of despair rippled through the assembly. Its bioluminescent patches dimmed. The crystalline collective's harmonic frequency shifted to minor keys. Even the stoic mechanoids displayed error messages across their optical displays. "What of the weapons research projects?" asked Representative Cathera from the Psionic Enclave, Dr. Nimrod of the Science Directorate activated a hologram showing failed experiment after failed experiment. "We have attempted quantum disruption fields, temporal displacement weapons, even reality manipulation devices. The harvesters adapt to every assault within hours. Their learning algorithms appear to be beyond our computational models. Perhaps we could negotiate," suggested Ambassador Felrain from the diplomatic corps. "Surely these beings have some rational purpose." Maranthic's form flickered with what might have been bitter amusement. Tried. Their response was simple: inefficient biological matter detected. Conversion imminent. They view all organic life as a resource to be processed. As the debate continued, desperation crept into every voice. These were beings who had solved poverty, disease, and war through logic and cooperation. They had built a utopian society spanning thousands of worlds. Yet now they faced an enemy that their perfect system could not defeat. First contact. Protocol It was Junior Analyst Quintal, who first suggested the unthinkable. The young Lyrian had been monitoring deep space communications, cataloging all known civilizations in a desperate search for allies. "There is one option we haven't considered," Quintal said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sector 7 contains a developing civilization that achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. They call themselves humans." A collective shudder ran through the assembly. Primitive species were carefully monitored, but never contacted, until they demonstrated sufficient social evolution. These humans were notorious among the observation teams for their chaotic nature. "Absolutely not," declared Security Chief Ganther. "The psychological profiles are disturbing. They practice something called war against their own species. Their planet is classified as a Class 9 Deathworld. The gravity alone would crush most of our representatives. Zara accessed the classified files on humanity, and her stress patterns deepened as she read. Earth was indeed a nightmare world by galactic standards. The surface was racked by violent weather systems that could level cities. The atmosphere was corrosive to most known life forms. Worse yet, the planet teemed with predatory life forms that had driven evolution toward ever greater violence. Look at their military history, Ganther continued, sharing disturbing images. They fight using projectile weapons that fire solid metal at supersonic speeds. They employ chemical explosives, even use nuclear fusion as a weapon. They're savages. But Quintel persisted. Perhaps that savagery is exactly what we need. Our enemies adapt to logical, predictable responses. Humans appear to be anything but logical. The desperate gambit 3 days later, Zara found herself aboard the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Voice, approaching the Sol system. The human homeworld grew larger on the view screen, a blue marble swirled with white clouds. It looked deceptively peaceful until the sensor readings revealed the true horror beneath. By the eternal light, whispered Navigator Plexia, the entire planet is a weapon. Look at those electromagnetic signatures. Earth's surface buzzed with energy readings that made no sense to galactic observers. Massive metal structures housed something called cities, where billions of humans lived in impossible density. Satellites armed with nuclear weapons orbited the planet. The oceans themselves seemed to be filled with mobile weapons platforms. Incoming. Transmission, reported Communications Officer Rendell. They're using primitive radio waves, but the encryption is actually quite sophisticated. The view screen activated, showing a middle-aged human female in a dark blue uniform. Her species was smaller than most galactic races. But there was something unsettling about her eyes. They seemed to evaluate everything as either threat or resource. This is Admiral Rebecca Torres of Earth Defense Command, the human said. You are in restricted space. State your purpose or prepare to be fired upon. Zara stepped forward, activating the universal translator. Greetings. I am Ambassador Zara Kethis of the Galactic Union. We come seeking diplomatic contact. The human's expression didn't change. The what now? You're saying there's a galactic government and nobody told us? The bluntness of the response caught Zara off guard. In galactic diplomacy, first contact followed careful protocols refined over millennia. This human simply demanded answers as if she had every right to them. Your species was deemed not ready for contact, Zara explained carefully. However, circumstances have changed. We face an existential threat that may require unconventional assistance. Admiral Torres leaned back in her chair. Let me get this straight. There's a whole galaxy full of aliens out there. You never bothered to say hello, and now you want our help because you're in trouble. She laughed, a harsh sound that made several of Zara's crew step backward. This ought to be good. The presentation. Of horror 2 hours later, Zara found herself in what humans called the Pentagon, a 5-sided structure that served as their military command center. The building itself was a testament to human paranoia, layers of security, redundant systems, and weapons emplacements that could have held off a small invasion. The briefing room was filled with human military officers, their faces showing a mixture of skepticism and fascination. Admiral Torres had assembled what she called the Joint Chiefs, the leaders of humanity's various military branches. Show them what we're dealing with, Torres ordered. Zara activated her portable hologram projector, displaying the Harvester fleet in all its terrible glory. The humans watched in silence as she explained the scope of the threat, millions of machine intelligences consuming everything in their path, growing stronger with each victory. How long until they reach Earth? Asked a general whose chest was covered in colorful ribbons that apparently indicated past victories. If their current pace continues, approximately 8 months, Zara replied. The humans exchanged glances, and Zara noticed something she hadn't expected. They weren't panicking. Instead, they seemed to be calculating, planning. What kind of weapons do these harvesters use? Asked another officer. Zara displayed tactical data from previous battles. Energy weapons primarily. Plasma beams, particle accelerators, gravitational manipulators. Their hulls are composed of adaptive smart materials that reconfigure to counter any attack. A younger human with pilot's wings on his uniform leaned forward. What about kinetic weapons? Good old-fashioned bullets and missiles? Primitive projectile weapons? Zara was confused. Those haven't been used in galactic warfare for thousands of years. They're completely ineffective against modern shielding. The pilot grinned, an expression that showed far too many teeth. Ma'am, I don't think you understand. You don't use primitive projectile weapons. We use really, really advanced projectile weapons. Admiral Torres stood, her decision made. Ambassador, we'll need complete tactical data on these harvesters. Ship designs, behavioral patterns, everything you've got. We're willing to help. Zara couldn't hide her surprise. Help. Torres laughed again. Lady, you just told us that. Galaxy-eating robots are heading for Earth. This isn't about helping you. This is about protecting our home. But I'll warn you right now. If we do this, we do it our way. Zara felt hope for the first time in months. What do you mean? The Admiral walked to a wall display showing Earth's fleet positions. Your people fight like gentlemen, following rules and protocols. Fight like what we are, predators from a death world. If you want our help, you get all of us. The good, the bad, and the absolutely terrifying. Yes. Zara looked around the room at the faces of these strange humans. She realized they weren't afraid of the harvesters. They were excited. For the first time in galactic history, someone was eager to face the ultimate threat. Oh. When can your fleet be ready? She asked. Admiral Torres checked a device on her wrist. The 7th Fleet can launch in 72 hours. Fair warning, though. We're bringing everything. Our ships, our weapons, our tactics, and our attitude. Hope your allies are ready for that. Zara transmitted the coordinates for the primary battlefront. Knowing she had just unleashed something unprecedented on the galaxy, she only hoped that when the shooting stopped, there would still be a civilization left to save. As the diplomatic shuttle departed Earth's orbit, she watched the blue world fall away and wondered if she had just saved the galaxy or doomed it to a different kind of chaos entirely. Either way, the universe was about to learn what happened when someone threatened a species that clawed its way to the top of the deadliest world ever discovered. The arrival of Chaos Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching the Kepler Defense Station grow larger on the view screen. The massive structure was beautiful in its alien design, flowing curves and crystalline spires that caught starlight like a cosmic work of art. It was also completely wrong for warfare by human standards. Look at that thing, muttered Commander Jake Morrison, her tactical officer. It's like they built a space cathedral and forgot to put guns on it. Sarah had to agree. The station was clearly designed by beings who thought of space combat as an elegant dance between civilized opponents. Humans thought of it as a bar fight with weapons of mass destruction. Incoming transmission from the station, reported Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka from Communications. It's the Lyrian ambassador. Zara Kethis appeared on the screen, her silver skin displaying patterns that the cultural briefings had identified as extreme stress. Behind her, Sarah could see other aliens moving, with what looked like barely controlled panic. Captain Chen thanked the Eternal Light you're here. The Harvester Advanced Fleet has been detected 3 days out from this position. Our defense coordinator estimates we have 96 hours before contact. Sarah nodded crisply. Understood. Ambassador. We'll need complete tactical data and strategic command authority. A pause. Then Zara's skin patterns shifted to what might have been confusion. Strategic command? Captain, this is General Thane Korvik of the Drakmor Defense Force. He has led our military responses for the past 4 decades. The screen split to show a towering reptilian being whose scales were marked with intricate patterns, indicating rank and achievements. The general's yellow eyes held the look of someone who had never lost a battle until recently. Said, his voice a deep rumble, I appreciate your species' willingness to assist, but coordinated defense requires experienced leadership. Your people have been in space for less than a century. Sarah's expression didn't change, but Morrison made a choking sound that might have been suppressed laughter. General, with respect, how many battles have you won against the Harvesters? Korvik's scales darkened. The Harvesters represent a unique challenge that requires 0, Sarah interrupted. The answer is 0. Your people have lost every engagement because you're fighting a 21st century war with 21st century tactics against a post-singularity enemy. She leaned forward. We're going to do this differently. Culture shock and preparation 2 hours later. The aliens aboard Kepler Station were experiencing what the human cultural attached cheerfully called cognitive realignment. It started when the human fleet took defensive positions that made no logical sense. Dr. Marcus Webb, the expedition's xenobiologist, found himself explaining human military doctrine to a room full of bewildered alien commanders. The key concept you need to understand is that humans don't fight fair. We cheat, lie, and break every rule if it means winning. The assembled officers included representatives from a dozen species, each more horrified than the last. Commander Veltar of the original Galactic Union fleet spoke first. Dr. Webb, surely you exaggerate. Civilized warfare has protocols, honor codes, which is why you keep losing, Webb interrupted gently. Look, your species evolved on worlds where cooperation meant survival. Ours evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill us. Learned to be creative. On the tactical display, the human fleet was doing something unprecedented. Instead of forming neat defensive lines, they were scattered throughout the asteroid field in seemingly random patterns. Some ships were hiding behind planetoids. Others were using mining platforms as mobile weapons platforms. What is the strategic purpose of this formation? Asked Korvik, his voice strained. Captain Chen's voice came over the CUM system. It's called an ambush. General, when the Harvesters arrive, they'll expect to see your standard defensive wall formation. Instead, they'll fly into a hornet's nest. The aliens watched in fascination and horror as human engineers began modifying the mining platforms. Or processors were being converted into kinetic cannons. Asteroid haulers received armor plating and missile pods. Even the civilian freighters were being fitted with weapons that violated several galactic treaties. This is madness, whispered Ambassador Kethis. You're turning industrial equipment into weapons of war. Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez looked up from her work, grinning. Ma'am, on Earth we have a saying, if it's stupid but it works, it ain't. Stupid. These mining rigs can accelerate a 1,000-ton chunk of metal to 3% light speed. You want to tell me that won't hurt? The philosophy of war in the station's main conference room, philosophical discussion was taking place that would reshape galactic military thinking. Dr. Webb had been joined by Captain Chen and several alien military theorists trying to bridge the gap between human and galactic approaches to conflict. Your species fights like artists, Chen explained, calling up holographic displays of previous galactic battles. Beautiful formations, elegant maneuvers, sophisticated weapons that minimize collateral damage. It's impressive, but it's predictable. Switch to human military history. We fight like survivors. Every war we've ever fought taught us that the side willing to break more rules usually wins. Korvik studied the tactical displays with growing unease. These human conflicts show massive destruction, civilian casualties, total warfare. Surely this is not necessary against the Harvesters. The Harvesters don't take prisoners, General, Webb said quietly. They don't negotiate. They don't show mercy. They're trying to exterminate every organic being in the galaxy. This isn't a border dispute or a trade war. This is survival. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. For species that had eliminated war from their cultures centuries ago, the human approach was deeply unsettling. There's something else, Chen continued. Your people fight as individuals. Skilled, trained, logical individuals. Humans fight as a pack. She activated a recording from a human military exercise. Watch this. The aliens saw human soldiers in impossible situations, outnumbered, outgunned, facing certain death. But instead of surrendering or retreating, they fought with a ferocity that defied logic. More importantly, they fought for each other. We don't abandon our own, Chen said simply. Ever. That's not strategy or tactics. That's who we are. Skin patterns shifted to something the translation computers couldn't identify. How do you maintain unit cohesion in hopeless situations? Because they're not hopeless, Chen replied. Difficult, yes. Deadly, absolutely. But not hopeless. We're humans. We specialize in impossible. First contact with the enemy. The Harvester advanced scouts arrived exactly on schedule, dropping out of hyperspace with mechanical precision. The alien defenders watched their sensors with growing dread as the enemy formation took shape. 30 vessels, each 1 kilometer. Long and bristling with adaptive weapon systems, the human response was immediate and completely insane by galactic standards. All units, this is indomitable. Chin's voice cut across all frequencies. Remember, these things adapt to whatever we throw at them. So we throw everything at once. The first human attack came from the modified mining platforms. Massive chunks of asteroid, accelerated by magnetic launchers, began hammering the Harvester ships at relativistic speeds. The enemy shields flared and adapted, restructuring to deflect kinetic impacts. Then the missile swarms hit. Not the elegant, guided projectiles of galactic warfare, but crude. Brutal weapons designed for one purpose, to overwhelm defensive systems through sheer volume. The Harvester's point defense systems blazed, shooting down thousands of incoming missiles. What they couldn't shoot down were the decoys mixed in with the real weapons. Chunks of metal and ice fitted with sensor reflectors that looked exactly like warheads on enemy scanners. Adaptive countermeasures detected, reported the lead Harvester. In its mechanical voice, restructuring defensive priorities. That's when the real attack began. Human fighters, painted matte black and running silent, emerged from hiding spots throughout the asteroid field. They didn't engage in elegant dogfights or follow predictable attack vectors. Instead, they swarmed the Harvester ships like angry wasps, using jury-rigged weapons and tactics that made no logical sense. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park's fighter squadron demonstrated what humans called aggressive improvisation, when her missiles proved ineffective against adapted shields. She ordered her pilots to ram their fighters into enemy weapon systems, ejecting at the last second in armored pods. "This is insane," transmitted one of the Harvester vessels. "These beings are destroying their own equipment." The human response came from Park herself, as her ejection pod was recovered by a rescue ship. "That's the idea, you mechanical bastard." The power of unpredictability in the station's command center. The alien observers watched in stunned amazement as human tactics achieved what sophisticated galactic strategies had failed to accomplish. They were actually hurting the Harvesters. "I don't understand," Korvik admitted, his tactical implants struggling to analyze the chaotic battle. "Their attack patterns make no logical sense. How are they succeeding?" Dr. Webb was monitoring the Harvester communications, his xenolinguistics, training allowing him to interpret their machine language in real time. "Because the Harvesters can't adapt to chaos," he explained excitedly. "Their learning algorithms are designed to counter logical, predictable responses. But humans aren't logical." On the tactical display, a human destroyer was spinning end over end. While firing its weapons in all directions, using its own rotation to create an unpredictable firing pattern that the Harvesters couldn't anticipate, another ship was broadcasting what the translation computers identified as music on all frequencies. A chaotic noise called death metal that was somehow interfering with Harvester coordination protocols. The humans are using psychological warfare against machines, Zara realized. How is that possible? "Because the machines were programmed by beings who thought like us," Webb replied. "Logical, predictable, civilized. They never anticipated an enemy that would sacrifice their own ships for tactical advantage, or use sound as a weapon, or..." He paused as another impossible human tactic unfolded on screen. "Or strap nuclear warheads to civilian freighters and ram them into enemy vessels." The battle reached its climax when Captain Chen ordered what she called the full human experience. Every ship in the fleet simultaneously broadcast Earth's history, images of human wars, natural disasters, and the endless struggle for survival on a world that tried to kill its children every day. The Harvester fleet, designed to process and adapt to sensory input, suddenly found themselves trying to analyze 10,000 years of continuous warfare and survival. Their adaptive algorithms, faced with the sheer chaotic violence of human existence, began to crash. Computational overflow detected, transmitted the Harvester command ship, unable to process input parameters. Withdraw, withdraw, withdraw. The mechanical fleet retreated into hyperspace, leaving behind 6 destroyed vessels and a galaxy that would never look at humanity the same way again. The new reality in the aftermath of victory, the alien commanders gathered around Captain Chen with expressions ranging from awe to horror. The humans had achieved in one battle what the Galactic military had failed to accomplish in months of warfare. "How do we adapt your tactics to our own forces?" Korvac asked, though his voice suggested he wasn't sure he wanted the answer. Chen smiled, and several aliens instinctively stepped backward. "General, you can't. Your people are civilized. You've evolved beyond the need for the kind of desperation that drives human warfare." She gestured toward the viewscreen where human crews were already salvaging Harvester technology, turning enemy weapons against their creators. "But that's okay. You don't need to become like us. You just need to point us at the enemy and get out of our way." Zara approached cautiously, her skin patterns cycling through what Webb identified as deep contemplation. "Captain, your people aren't just warriors, you're something else entirely." "We're survivors," Chen replied simply. "And now that you've shown us a threat to our survival, you've made it our problem." Her expression grew serious. "Ambassador, how many more Harvester fleets are out there?" "Our intelligence estimates suggest 47 full fleets, plus the core processing center that controls them all." The human captain's smile was predatory. "Good. That gives us enough targets to make this interesting." As the human fleet began preparations for the next engagement, the galaxy realized it had gained something unprecedented: protectors who didn't fight for honor or glory, but for the simple, terrifying principle that some things were worth any sacrifice to defend. War was far from over, but for the first time in months the galaxy had hope, and the Harvesters had learned to fear. Part 3. The Final Stand and New. The beginning's the heart of darkness 3 months after the first human victory. The combined fleet approached the Harvester core, a massive construct hidden in the gravitational shadow of a dying star. Captain Sarah Chen stood before the largest gathering of ships in galactic history, but the odds remained impossible. 200 vessels from 47 species faced a mechanical nightmare that defied comprehension. The core was larger than most planets, its surface covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Surrounding it, nearly 1,000 Harvester ships moved in perfect formation, their adaptive hulls gleaming with absorbed energy from countless conquered worlds. Final tactical assessment, Chen requested from her combined command staff, Dr. Marcus. Webb's face was grim as he presented the intelligence data. The core is essentially a massive quantum computer that coordinates all Harvester operations. It's also their manufacturing center, capable of producing a new fleet every 72 hours. He paused. And it's protected by defenses that have been adapting to our tactics for 3 months. General Thane Korvac, now serving as the Alien Forces Coordinator, added his analysis. "Our previous victories have taught them to counter human unpredictability. They've developed what their transmissions call chaos protocols." Chen nodded. The past months had been a grinding campaign across the galaxy, with humans leading increasingly desperate attacks against Harvester fleets. Each victory had come at a higher cost, as the enemy learned to anticipate even human irrationality. "About the weapon?" she asked. Dr. Alina Vasquez, the expedition's quantum physicist, looked uncomfortable. "The coherence bomb is ready, but it's still theoretical. If it works, it should disrupt the quantum entanglement that allows the core to coordinate the Harvester network. And if it doesn't work? Then we've just donated a very expensive nuclear device to a machine civilization that specializes in turning our own technology against us." Admiral Rebecca Torres, who had insisted on personally leading the attack, stepped forward. "Captain, the weapon is irrelevant if we can't get close enough to deploy it. That core is surrounded by more firepower than the rest of the galaxy combined." Chen studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. The human fleet had already lost 60% of its ships in the campaign leading to this moment, The alien forces, inspired by human courage but lacking human adaptability, had suffered even worse casualties. "There is one option," she said. "Finally, but it requires every ship in the fleet, and most of us won't be coming home." The impossible plan. The command briefing included representatives from every species in the fleet. The conference room aboard the super dreadnought Defiance had been modified to accommodate beings that ranged from energy entities to crystalline life forms. But the mood was universally somber. Chen activated the holographic display showing the core and its defenses. "The Harvesters have adapted to our tactics. But they've made one crucial mistake. They're still thinking like logical beings." She highlighted the enemy defensive formations. "They've positioned their fleets to counter every known form of attack. Energy weapons, kinetic strikes, electromagnetic warfare, even the psychological tactics we used earlier. But they're defending." Against an attack, Zara Kethis, now serving as the combined fleet's diplomatic coordinator, spoke up. "Captain, what else is there but attack?" Chen's smile was the expression that had terrified enemies across the galaxy. "Surrender." The room erupted in confused voices speaking dozens of languages. Korvik's translator barely managed to keep up as he demanded clarification. "You're proposing we surrender to machines that have already declared their intent to exterminate all organic life?" "No," Chen replied calmly. "I'm proposing we make them think we're surrendering while we do something else entirely." She manipulated the hologram to show fleet movements. "The human ships will approach under a surrender flag, broadcasting our capitulation on all frequencies. We'll power down weapons, drop shields, and let them take us prisoner." Dr. Webb was the first to understand. "We're going to let them capture the human fleet." "Every ship," Chen confirmed. "The Harvesters will want to study us, to understand how we managed to hurt them. They'll bring us aboard their vessels for analysis." Admiral Torres leaned back in her chair. "And once we're inside their defenses, we detonate every nuclear device in the human arsenal simultaneously, not as weapons as electromagnetic pulse generators. The resulting energy surge will disable their adaptive systems long enough for the alien fleets to deliver the coherence bomb." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Korvik was the first to speak. "Captain, you're talking about sacrificing your entire fleet. Every human ship, every human life." Chen's expression never changed. "General, 3 months ago, your people were facing extinction. We've bought you time, taught you to fight, and shown you that the Harvesters can be beaten. But this is the price of victory." Zara's skin pattern cycled through emotions that had no translation. "There must be another way." "There isn't," Tora said quietly. "And even if there was, this is who we are. Humans don't abandon their friends. We don't leave jobs half-finished, and we sure as hell don't let genocide happen on our watch." Dr. Vasquez raised a crucial point. "The EMP burst will need to be precisely timed. If even one human ship detonates early, the Harvesters will adapt before the others can follow through." Chen nodded. "Which is why we're going to broadcast it on the emergency frequency that every human ship monitors, Song from Earth. When it ends, everyone detonates simultaneously." "What song?" asked Webb. Chen's smile became almost gentle. "Amazing Grace. 3 minutes and 17 seconds. Should be enough time for the alien fleets to get into position." The last song of Earth the human fleet approached the core in formation, broadcasting surrender on all frequencies. Every weapon was powered down, every shield dropped. To the Harvesters' sensors, they appeared to be a defeated enemy seeking mercy. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Harvester ships swarmed, the human fleet using tractor beams and boarding pods to capture every vessel. The mechanical beings had learned caution from their previous encounters with humans, but curiosity overrode their programming. They wanted to understand these creatures that fought with such incomprehensible ferocity. Aboard the Indomitable, Chen watched as Harvester drones boarded her ship. The mechanical beings moved with precise efficiency, herding her crew into containment areas while they're scanning equipment. Analyzed everything from human biology to ship construction. Fascinating, transmitted a lead harvester unit. These beings show no fear despite certain termination. Anomalous behavior requires detailed analysis. Chen allowed herself to be restrained, watching as her crew was processed with mechanical efficiency. Around the core, similar scenes played out on hundreds of human ships. Each vessel was being systematically dismantled and studied, while their crews were prepared for whatever passed for harvester scientific examination. The alien fleets hung back at the agreed-upon distance, appearing to retreat in the face of harvester superiority. Only Chen and a few others knew they were actually positioning themselves for the final assault. Human designation: Chen Sarah. Command authority confirmed, the harvester interrogator announced. Explain the tactical reasoning behind your species' irrational combat behavior. Chen looked directly into the machine's optical sensors. You want to understand humans? Here's lesson 1. We're not rational. We're emotional. And right now, I'm feeling very, very angry. She activated her personal communicator with a simple voice command. All human vessels. This is Captain Chen. It's been an honor serving with you. Remember why we're here? Remember what we're protecting? Remember that no matter what happens next, we die as free beings defending those we love. It's the opening. Notes of amazing grace began broadcasting on the emergency frequency. A human voice singing the ancient hymn that had comforted countless souls facing their darkest hour. The price of victory across the harvester fleet? Aomon crews began there. Final preparations. In engineering sections, nuclear reactors were set to overload. Weapons bays, remaining warheads were armed for simultaneous detonation. In medical bays, doctors held hands with patients too injured to move. The harvesters, focused on their scientific analysis, failed to detect the subtle preparations taking place on every human ship. Their sensors were designed to monitor for weapons and threats, not for a species saying goodbye. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park, captured along with her fighter squadron, found herself in a holding cell with 20 other pilots. They could hear the hymn playing softly over the ship's communication system, and she saw tears in the eyes of hardened combat veterans. You know what the crazy part is? Park whispered to her wingman. 3 months ago, we didn't even know these aliens existed. Now, we're dying for them. Not dying for them, replied Captain Jake Morrison from the next cell. Dying with them? There's a difference. The song continued, each verse marking another step closer to the moment when humanity would make its final sacrifice. The harvesters, in their mechanical perfection, could not comprehend the emotions driving their captives. Meanwhile, the alien fleets moved into their final positions. General Korvik coordinated the approach with military precision learned from human tactics, while Dr. Vasquez made final adjustments to the coherence bomb from her position aboard Zara's ship. 2 minutes remaining, announced Admiral Torres from the Defiance. Her ship, now captured and being torn apart by harvester analysis, drones would serve as the epicenter of the electromagnetic pulse. All ships report ready for simultaneous detonation. The confirmations came in from across the fleet, the unbreakable, relentless. The Ghost, every human vessel that had fought its way across the galaxy to reach this moment. Torres continued, her voice steady, despite knowing she would not live to see the outcome. It's been the greatest honor of my life to serve alongside each and every one of you. The symphony of sacrifice as the final verse of Amazing Grace began. Something unprecedented happened. The alien fleets, listening to the human farewell, began broadcasting their own songs of tribute. The crystalline beings created harmonic frequencies that made the stars themselves seem to sing. The energy entities pulsed in rhythm with the human hymn. Even the stoic mechanoids displayed scrolling text that translated to prayers in 100 languages. Zara. Kethis watched from the bridge of her ship as the greatest act of sacrifice in galactic history unfolded before her. They're really going to do it, she whispered. They're going to die for us. Dr. Webb, now aboard the alien command ship as a human liaison, was monitoring harvester communications. The machines are detecting emotional resonance in the broadcasts. They're trying to analyze why their prisoners appear to be ... celebrating. The harvesters had encountered many species in their conquest of the galaxy. They had studied fear, desperation, and attempts at bargaining. But they had never encountered a species that faced extinction with songs of hope and brotherhood. Anomalous behavior intensifying, reported the Corps' central intelligence. Captured humans display increasing unity rather than expected survival. Competition, unable to model psychological framework. The song reached its crescendo, and across the human fleet, fingers moved toward detonation switches. In that moment, every human being in the fleet shared the same thought, that their children, their grandchildren, and generations yet unborn would grow up in a galaxy free from the shadow of extinction. "Grace will lead me home," sang the voice. On the broadcast? And 3,000 human voices joined in for the final line. The electromagnetic pulse that followed lit up the galaxy. Like a newborn star, the dawn of a new era, the simultaneous detonation of every human nuclear device created, an energy surge that overwhelmed the Harvester's adaptive systems. For exactly 17 seconds, every mechanical consciousness in the core system was offline. Their processing centers scrambled by energies they could not absorb or redirect in those 17 seconds. The alien fleet struck with everything they had. The coherence bomb, delivered by a desperate ramming attack from General Korvik's flagship, detonated at the heart of the core. The quantum disruption spread outward like ripples in a pond, severing the entanglement links that connected every Harvester unit across the galaxy. When the energy surge faded, the core was silent. Throughout the galaxy, Harvester fleets stopped moving, their coordination network severed. Individual units, designed to operate as part of a collective intelligence, found themselves isolated and confused.
Ow.
The war was over, the galaxy was saved, and humanity had paid the ultimate price. Memorial 1 year later, Zarakethis stood before the memorial to human sacrifice that now orbited the site where the core had been destroyed. The structure was a collaborative effort by every species in the galaxy, a crystalline spire. It caught light from nearby stars and projected it across the cosmos in patterns that could be seen from 1,000 light-years away. Carved into the memorial's base were the names of every human who had died in the war. 3,000 names, representing a species that had sacrificed everything to protect strangers they had known for less than a year. General Korvik, now bearing scars from his ramming attack that had somehow failed to kill him, approached the memorial with a delegation from the newly reformed Galactic Defense Force. "The human fleet's final transmission has been decoded," he reported to Zara. Captain Chen's last words were, "Tell the galaxy that Earth's children kept their promise. The pack protects the pack." Zara's skin patterns shifted to deep reverence as she placed a crystal flower at the base of the memorial. Round her, representatives from every species in the galaxy performed their own rituals of remembrance. But the memorial was not just about mourning. It was also about the future. The war had changed the galaxy in ways that went far beyond defeating the Harvesters. A species that had spent millennia in peaceful isolation now worked together with military efficiency learned from human example. The old Galactic Union had been replaced by something stronger, a confederation built on the human principle that some things were worth any sacrifice to defend. Dr. Webb, one of the few human survivors recovered from the wreckage of the battle, had become the galaxy's foremost expert on what scholars were calling the human paradigm. His research stations throughout known space studied the revolutionary idea that controlled chaos could be more effective than perfect order. "What have we learned?" Zara asked him as they stood before the memorial. Webb smiled, though it was a sadder expression than the grins humans had worn into battle. That the galaxy was missing something fundamental. We had achieved peace by eliminating everything that made peace worth having. Passion, sacrifice, the willingness to fight for what you believe in. He gestured toward the memorial's spire, which was broadcasting its light across the cosmos. Humans reminded us that some things matter more than survival. They showed us what it means to be truly alive. The new protectors, in the months following the memorial's dedication, reports began filtering in from across the galaxy. The remaining Harvester units, isolated and primitive, without their collective intelligence, were being systematically hunted down by newly formed military units trained in human tactics. But more importantly, the galaxy itself was changing. Species that had been passive observers for millennia were now actively defending their neighbors. The crystalline beings had formed rapid response fleets. The energy entities were developing new forms of space combat. Even the peaceful agricultural worlds were training militias using human military manuals translated into their languages. The memorial had become more than a monument to human sacrifice. It was the headquarters of the Galactic Defense Confederation, a military alliance built on human principles, but adapted to the strengths of every member species. Zara, now serving as the Confederation's first Supreme Coordinator, received daily reports from across known space. Pirates found themselves facing not just local defense forces, but coordinated responses from multiple species. Aggressive expansionist. Civilizations discovered that threatening one world meant fighting the entire galaxy. The human concept of the pack protects the pack had become galactic law. Status report she requested from the morning briefing. Commander Veltar, now bearing the scars of a dozen battles fought in human style, consulted his tactical displays. 17 rescue operations completed this month. 6 aggressive species have requested membership in the Confederation rather than face our combined forces. The Outer Rim territories report complete elimination of Harvester remnants. Zara nodded, studying the reports. The galaxy was safer than it had been in millennia, but the price had been high. Every species had learned to fight, and fighting changed those who practiced it. Any word from the deep space exploration fleets? She asked. The most interesting development comes from Sector 7, Veltar replied. Long-range sensors have detected what appears to be another Deathworld, approximately 40 light-years from Earth's original position. Zara felt her stress patterns shift to something between hope and concern. Another Deathworld meant another species like humanity might exist. The galaxy had learned the value of having protectors, but it had also learned how dangerous such protectors could be. Prepare a contact mission, she ordered. But remember the protocols we established. Peaceful contact, complete honesty about galactic history, and most importantly, she paused, looking up at the memorial spire that broadcast its message of sacrifice across the stars. Most importantly, we tell them about the humans. Tell them that their children aren't alone in the dark, and that somewhere in this galaxy, there are others who understand what it means to come from a world that tries to kill you. As the briefing ended and the various species returned to their duties, Zara remained at the memorial. The human sacrifice had saved the galaxy, but perhaps their greatest gift had been showing every other species what they were capable of becoming. The galaxy was no longer a collection of peaceful civilizations hiding from the dark. It had become something stronger, something that would have made humanity proud, a confederation of warriors who fought not for conquest, but for the simple. A revolutionary idea that every life in the cosmos was worth protecting. Humanity was gone, but their legacy lived on in every species that now stood ready to face the darkness between the stars. The pack had grown to encompass the entire galaxy, and the pack would always protect the pack. In the distance, new ships launched toward unknown worlds, carrying the message that Earth's children had died to deliver. No one fights alone, no one dies forgotten. And no matter how dark the universe becomes, there will always be those willing to stand guard in the night. The memorial's light pulsed once more across the cosmos. And somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, other civilizations saw that light and knew they were not alone.
Ow.
The story of humanity had ended, but the legend of what they represented had just begun.